Gold Thread Studios. Mango Hill Police Station. Episode 1. The patrol car that went to church. Before anybody called it theft, Sergeant Marva Sinclair called it disrespect. At 7:05 on Monday morning, the Mango Hill Police Station had one patrol vehicle. At 7:14, it had none. The vehicle in question was a 12-year-old white police pickup with a stubborn passenger door, a weak-left headlamp, and an air conditioning system that had not produced cold air since Portia Simpson Miller was Prime Minister. It was not a beautiful vehicle. It was not a fast vehicle. But it belonged to the government of Jamaica, which meant losing it required paperwork, and Sergeant Sinclair hated paperwork almost as much as she hated foolishness. She stood beneath the station's veranda, staring at the empty patch of gravel where the pickup had been parked 9 minutes earlier. Johnson. Constable Kemar Johnson straightened immediately. "Yes, Sergeant." "Where is the vehicle?" Kemar looked at the gravel. Then he looked behind the station, as if the pickup might have become shy and gone around the back. "I don't know, Sergeant." Sergeant Sinclair turned slowly toward him. Marva Sinclair was 48 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall, and capable of making grown men confess to things they had only considered doing. "You were the last person to drive it. Yesterday evening. You had the keys." "I put them on the hook." "Which hook?" "The key hook." The sergeant closed her eyes. There were moments in police work when training, experience, and discipline came together to solve a difficult problem. This was not one of those moments. Constable Shanice Campbell stepped out of the station carrying the empty key ring. Shanice had transferred from Spanish Town 3 months earlier. She was quiet, observant, and still adjusting to a district where witnesses usually arrived before the crime was reported. "The keys are gone," she said. "There's no broken glass, no sign of forced entry, and the gate wasn't damaged." "So somebody walked into my station," Sergeant Sinclair said, "took government keys off government property, entered a government vehicle, and drove away while 3 government employees stood 10 yards away singing Blessed Assurance?" Nobody answered. Morning devotion had been Mr. Ralston Pert's idea. Mr. Pert was a retired school principal who visited the station every Monday to pray for the officers. His prayers were sincere, encouraging, and approximately the same length as a parliamentary debate. That morning, he had reached the 4th verse of his closing hymn when the patrol vehicle disappeared. Sergeant Sinclair checked her watch. The divisional inspector was scheduled to arrive from Black River at noon. She had less than 5 hours to recover a missing police vehicle, arrest whoever had taken it, wash the mud off it, and pretend the morning had been normal. "Nobody calls division yet," she said. Kemar's eyebrows rose. "Sergeant, I am not hiding anything. I am establishing the facts before I telephone my commanding officer and begin a sentence with the words, 'Sir, we seem to have misplaced the police vehicle.'" Shanice examined the wooden key hook. A short piece of yellow wool clung to one of the nails. On the floor beneath it lay a crumpled church bulletin. She picked it up. "Providence Deliverance Chapel," she read. "Women's Fellowship Anniversary Service." Kemar frowned. "You think church people thieved the vehicle?" "I think somebody who visited a church came inside the station." In Mango Hill, that description reduced the list of suspects from approximately 2,000 people to 1,998. Before the officers could continue, Miss Pearl Hilton marched through the gate. Miss Pearl owned the cookshop across from the station and considered herself a vital part of local law enforcement. She did not carry a badge. She carried information which she believed was more useful. "Morning, officers. Somebody stole my gas cylinder." Sergeant Sinclair rubbed her forehead. "Miss Pearl, not now." "What you mean, not now?" "Thief have office hours. We are dealing with an urgent matter." Miss Pearl glanced at the empty parking space. "Where the police vehicle?" 3 officers stared at her. Miss Pearl's eyes widened. No. Miss Pearl. Somebody stole it? Keep your voice down. She lowered her voice to a stage whisper that could be heard from the cookshop. Somebody stole the police vehicle? Sergeant Sinclair pulled her onto the veranda. Did you see anybody enter the station yard between 7:05 and 7:15? Miss Pearl folded her arms. I might have. Who? I don't gossip. Kemar coughed. Miss Pearl glared at him. I provide community context. Provide it quickly, Sergeant Sinclair said. Miss Pearl looked around before leaning closer. I saw a woman in white drive through the gate. What woman? Couldn't see her face properly. Big yellow hat. Yellow handbag. Driving like she had the devil behind her and tax office in front of her. Shanice held up the strand of wool. Was it a crocheted handbag? Yes. One of those big ones Sister Cynthia makes. She made one for everybody in the Women's Fellowship. Kemar looked toward the road leading to Providence Deliverance Chapel. Sister Cynthia Blake wears white every Monday. Sergeant Sinclair was already moving. They found Sister Cynthia at Mango Hill Health Center. She sat beside Pastor Lloyd Beckford, whose right eye had swollen almost completely shut. A nurse stood nearby holding an ice pack. Sister Cynthia's white dress was damp with perspiration. A broad yellow hat rested on her lap, beside a crocheted yellow handbag with a torn strap. When she saw Sergeant Sinclair, she smiled weakly. Morning, officers. Where is my patrol vehicle? The smile disappeared. Pastor Beckford attempted to speak, but the swelling had made his words difficult to understand. Sister Cynthia raised one hand. Sergeant, before you get upset. I am already upset. It was an emergency. What happened? Pastor Lloyd disturbed a wasp's nest behind the church. The man swelled up like festival dumpling. We called the station 6 times, but nobody answered. The telephone didn't ring. Well, my telephone said it was ringing. Sergeant Sinclair remembered the station's landline had been crackling since Friday's rain. Sister Cynthia continued. I drove to the station for help. All of you were outside with your eyes closed, singing. I called out, but Mr. Pert was holding a long note. Kemar looked away. So you took the keys? Shanice asked. I borrowed them. Without permission. I pay taxes. Sergeant Sinclair's expression did not change. Sister Cynthia sighed. Yes, Sergeant. I took the vehicle. I was wrong. But Pastor Lloyd couldn't breathe properly. The sergeant looked at the pastor, then at the nurse. Is he going to be all right? He'll be fine, the nurse said. The medication is working. Sergeant Sinclair turned back to Sister Cynthia. Where's the pickup? Sister Cynthia pointed through the health center window. The space outside was empty. It was right there, she whispered. Kemar hurried into the yard. Only tire marks remained. Sergeant Sinclair took a very slow breath. Sister Cynthia, did you leave the keys inside? No. 2 police officers came for it. What officers? They wore reflector vests. They said Sergeant Sinclair sent them. I sent nobody. Sister Cynthia's face changed. One of them knew my name. Everybody in 3 districts knows your name, Kemar said. The men had arrived on a motorcycle shortly after Sister Cynthia reached the clinic. One was tall and thin. The other was shorter, with an orange-smelling cologne strong enough to enter a room before he did. They claimed the station had sent them to collect the vehicle. Sister Cynthia handed over the keys. They looked official, she said. Did they have uniforms? Shanice asked. No. Badges? No. Identification? No. What made them look official? They walked fast. Sergeant Sinclair looked at Kemar. Call division. His hand moved toward his pocket. Before he could take out his phone, Shanice's portable radio crackled. Static filled the clinic. Then a man's voice came through. Turn left by the old tank. Another voice answered. I know where me going. A goat bleated loudly in the background. Then the radio went silent. The officers stared at one another. The thieves had taken the patrol radio with the vehicle and were pressing the transmit button accidentally. Kemar leaned closer to Shanice's radio. Old tank could mean content gap. Or Richmond Pen, Sergeant Sinclair said. Sister Cynthia stood. The tall one had red dirt all over his shoes. That narrows it, Kemar said. The soil west of the clinic is red. Old Cane Piece Road. Shanice nodded. And he had burr grass on his trousers. They were already somewhere overgrown before coming here. Sergeant Sinclair headed for the door. Then she stopped. Their patrol vehicle was missing. Kemar's personal car was at the mechanic. Shanice had arrived by taxi. Sergeant Sinclair had been dropped off by her sister. For the second time that morning, 3 Jamaican police officers stood in silence before a transportation problem. A horn sounded outside. Miss Pearl leaned through the window of her delivery van. The words Pearl's Country Cooking were painted across the side in fading red letters. I hear Sister Cynthia thief the police vehicle, she called. I did not thief it, Sister Cynthia protested. Somebody thief it from me. Miss Pearl shook her head. Imagine you thief something and let somebody thief it back. Careless. Sergeant Sinclair walked toward the van. Miss Pearl, we need your vehicle. For police business? Yes. Will government buy the gas? Miss Pearl. And I want my cylinder found. Get in the passenger seat. The van smelled of scallion, thyme, and last Friday's curry chicken. Its passenger door had to be tied shut with an electrical cord, and the engine coughed whenever the road climbed uphill. Nevertheless, it moved. Miss Pearl drove. Sergeant Sinclair sat beside her. Kemar and Shanice rode in the back among empty food containers and 2 large bags of yellow yam. As they turned onto Old Cane Piece Road, the radio crackled again. We can load the pumps first, a voice said. Then the cylinder. Miss Pearl's head snapped around. My cylinder. Watch the road, Sergeant Sinclair said. For 3 weeks, farmers across the western districts had reported stolen water pumps, tools, fertilizer, and cooking gas cylinders. The thieves operated early in the morning, moving through isolated properties before workers reached the fields. That day, they had received an unexpected gift, a marked police vehicle nobody would question. Shanice leaned toward the front. They have a stash somewhere nearby. They're using the pickup to collect it. Sergeant Sinclair took the radio. Unit 4, this is Mango Hill Base. Roadblock now in place at Content Gap. All vehicles subject to search. Kemar looked at her. Mango Hill had no Unit 4. It barely had Unit 1. The sergeant continued. Additional officers approaching Old Cane Piece from the eastern entrance. She released the button. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the stolen radio came alive. Roadblock? Which roadblock? I told you we should leave. The radio went silent again. Sergeant Sinclair allowed herself a small smile. They heard us. Miss Pearl pressed the accelerator. The van produced a noise like an exhausted tractor, but gained speed. They rounded a corner and saw the police pickup ahead. 2 men were inside. Several water pumps, bags of fertilizer, tools, and Miss Pearl's gas cylinder filled the back. There it is, Kemar shouted. The thieves saw Pearl's van and accelerated. For the first time in recorded history, Mango Hill witnessed a high-speed police pursuit in which the police were chasing their own vehicle inside a cookshop delivery van. Neither vehicle exceeded 50 kilometers per hour. Pearl leaned on the horn. It stuck. The horn blared continuously as the van bounced over the rough road. Turn it off, Sergeant Sinclair shouted. You think I wouldn't turn it off if I could? The police pickup turned onto Guava Peace Track. Kemar began laughing. What is funny? Shanice asked. That road doesn't go anywhere anymore. The bridge washed out last year. The thieves discovered this 90 seconds later. They abandoned the pickup near a locked cattle gate and ran in opposite directions. Shanice jumped from the van before it fully stopped. She followed the shorter man through a yam field, gaining ground while he struggled to keep his trousers from falling. He attempted to hide beneath a blue tarpaulin beside a shed. The bright orange cologne made hiding impossible. Shanice stood over the moving tarpaulin. Come out. Nobody answered. Sir, you are under a sheet, not invisible. He crawled out with both hands raised. Kemar chased the taller man into Mr. Bernard's goat pen. The suspect cleared the first fence. Kemar chased the taller man into Mr. Bernard's goat pen. The suspect cleared the first fence. Kemar went through the gate. The man looked back, laughed, and failed to notice Governor, the district's large, ill-tempered breeding ram, standing directly in his path. Governor lowered his head. 1 second later, the suspect landed in a water trough. Kemar arrested him while he was still trying to understand what had happened. By 11:30, the officers had recovered the patrol vehicle, 11 stolen farm pumps, 7 gas cylinders, 4 bags of fertilizer, a box of electrical tools, and a notebook containing the names of several buyers. Miss Pearl reclaimed her cylinder only after Shanice explained that it had to be photographed as evidence first. At 11:52, Divisional Inspector Ruthven Ellis arrived at Mango Hill Police Station. He stepped out of his clean SUV and surveyed the scene. The patrol pickup was covered in red mud. 2 handcuffed suspects sat inside the holding area. Pastor Lloyd rested on the veranda with an ice pack over his eye. Sister Cynthia waited to give a formal statement. Miss Pearl stood beside her gas cylinder. Mr. Pert had returned because he believed the morning prayer had been interrupted before the final blessing. Inspector Ellis looked at Sergeant Sinclair. Sergeant, what happened here? She handed him the incident report. At approximately 7:14, a civilian removed the patrol vehicle during a medical emergency. The vehicle was subsequently taken from that civilian by 2 suspects connected to the agricultural thefts we have been investigating. We recovered the vehicle, arrested both suspects, and seized stolen property. Inspector Ellis stared at her. A civilian stole the police vehicle? Borrowed, Sister Cynthia corrected. 2 thieves then stole it from her? Yes, sir. And your officers pursued them in that? He pointed toward Miss Pearl's van. Miss Pearl folded her arms. That van served this community faithfully for 11 years. Inspector Ellis examined the electrical cord holding the passenger door closed. What does it transport? Today? Stew peas. Tomorrow is curry goat. Governor bleated from the property across the road. Inspector Ellis closed his eyes. The inspection was postponed. Sister Cynthia received a formal warning and offered a sincere apology. Sergeant Sinclair promised to have the station telephone repaired and made it clear that paying taxes did not entitle anybody to borrow a police vehicle. The 2 suspects were charged with vehicle theft, impersonating police officers, possession of stolen property, and several counts connected to the farm robberies. Before leaving, Inspector Ellis ordered a locked key cabinet installed by the end of the week. The next morning, Sergeant Sinclair hung a handwritten sign above the new cabinet. Government property. Ask before borrowing. By lunchtime, somebody had added a second message beneath it. Answer the telephone when people call. Sergeant Sinclair recognized Sister Cynthia's handwriting. She left the message where it was. Across the road, Miss Pearl opened her cookshop. Governor settled beneath a mango tree. The repaired police pickup waited in the yard, its keys locked safely inside the station. And for one peaceful hour, nothing disappeared. In Mango Hill, that was considered excellent police work. End of episode 1.